Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. Unfortunately, had a big decommit today in running back commit and four-star prospect Jaylen McGill. I'll talk about what happened there and where we might look in the future for a running back commit. We'll talk about another, as Aaron Brightman would say, three-tread hire that has been made for the coaching staff. And we'll talk about tonight's basketball game and some player availability. But first, this podcast is presented to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA and college basketball to NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with the odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So Jaylen McGill, the running back from South Carolina, who was a top target on a lot of teams' boards down south, or not the top target, a top target, decommitted today from Rutgers. He was a four-star running back commit from South Carolina. Sounds like he's going to end up close to home. Rich, talk about where he's likely to end up and how the decommitment kind of came together.
Yeah, it's probably going to be South Carolina. We already submitted a future cast for it. Our national analyst, Sam Spiegelman, also submitted a future cast for it. He's very tied into the area. Even when he committed, like I told Sam about it. I was like, hey, man, just so you know, like we're getting a graphic together, blah, blah, blah. Like Jaylen McGill is going to commit to Rutgers. He goes, really? Over South Carolina? And I was like, yeah. So South Carolina has a guy on their board named Carson Baker. He's their number one target. Right after that, it's going to be Jaylen McGill. Jaylen McGill is their number two for a long time now. They thought they had a shot at Carson Baker, but he recently just scheduled official visits to Ohio State and Georgia. Being a Georgia guy, I'm going to say he's probably leaning Georgia, but when you schedule those two, you're more than likely not going to be able to land them. On top of that, South Carolina under Shane Beamer has done a great job of retaining their in-state talent. Almost every top prospect in the state of South Carolina has stayed home with the Gamecocks, so it makes a lot of sense here. Sounds like they kind of just upped their ante a little bit. They had an offer on the table previously. Rutgers obviously surpassed that offer. Now South Carolina's like, oh shit, well, we're losing our top guy. Now they move on to number two, basically. So it's just as simple as that. And it is a big blow for Rutgers a little bit because he's just a highly ranked guy, a guy that they loved. There's higher ranked running backs in our cycle, in our network alone, that I know Rutgers liked McGill over. So it is a little bit of a blow. I got to see him in person. He's got a good build too, and he's going to be a damn good running back. He doesn't have that top end speed like that's you kind of want with some backs, but he reminded me of a more bulky, more like stocky version of Kyle Monangai, which I thought would have worked out pretty well. But it is what it is. He won't be returning, so anyone that keeps asking these same questions about Gavin Sidwar can stop asking them about Jaylen McGill. So yeah, it is what it is, but. They're pretty good with running back recruiting, so I'm not really too mad about it. And Demir Shaw just extended his contract. He's not going anywhere. He's probably the best recruiter on staff right now. I think you trust him to go find another one.
Yeah, that's the thing. We have such a deep backfield right now that they really can be selective with the guy that they choose to go after in this class. And depending on where Kyle Monangai goes in the draft, you could really hype up the production that we've gotten in the Chiano 2.0 era.
Oh, yeah.
With Nungai, with Isaiah Pacheco, the obvious two. But, I mean, any running back they seem to plug in there has done well. Antoine Raymond, CJ Campbell, I'm expecting big things from this year. So they can choose to be patient with this. Hopefully it breaks the four-star running back curse. Every time a four-star running back decommits from Rutgers, they end up being a star NFL player. The last two were Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, who led my Eagles to a Super Bowl victory on Sunday, which we don't have to get too deep into, but he'll forever have a soft spot in my heart, despite his Penn State allegiance. But where does Rutgers go from here? If you had, they don't have many running back offers out there right now, but of the guys that they have offered, is there anybody that makes a lot of sense to add to this class?
So out of all their running back offers right now, 4 of them are uncommitted still. One of them is Jaylen McGill, so gone. Another Savion Hitter, who's like number 3 in the country in terms of running backs. I don't see that one happening. And then it goes down to Chase Enlau out of the Hun School and Ladarius Pryor out of Orlando, Florida. I think you could kick the tires on Pryor a little bit if you want to. I don't know if they're necessarily going to. I think they're probably going to end up sending another offer or two out there. It's an easy sell for kids now too. Like this was the big sell to, or the big pitch to Jaylen McGill was the fact that it's a running back friendly offense. You could see that in our graphic tweet that we posted a couple weeks ago when Rutgers went to their house for an in-home visit. That was part of their presentation was, hey, dude, we run the ball a ton. We've produced at this rate. Even when Rutgers, I'm not going to point this out to recruits personally if I'm the coach, but even when Rutgers was bad under Chris Ash, they were still producing at running back. Gus Edwards made the league because of his year at Rutgers. Rob Martin was good. Who else? Joshua Hicks was pretty good. Like there was just back after back, and it just goes back to even Greg Schiano's 1.0 era. They always ran the ball really well. Brian Leonard, Ray Rice. Some guys don't pan out, of course, like the Rocket never panned out, even though everyone wanted him to. I thought Jordan Brooks had some good years too.
Yeah,
Got a whole dread pulled out of his head at one point. That was the most insane moment ever. But there's just so many running backs you can point back to in Rutgers history, in recent history, and even in like the early 2000s. It's just always been a run heavy offense, and it's not changing anytime soon. And that's just going to be their style. So it's an easy sell to kids. Another name is Chase Enlau out of the Hun School. If you asked me a year ago who's going to be the running back in the 2026 class, I would have said him 100%. I think Rutgers can do better than him, as crazy as that sounds. I shouldn't even say that sounds crazy because they got NIL to spend. Like it's not like they don't. There's a reason they're winning these recruitments finally. It's NIL. It's not rev sharing because rev sharing is not even a thing yet. Well, technically, I guess they can opt in as soon as today because it sounds like that bill's getting passed. But I think they have to opt in by March 1st, it sounds like specifically. But until that comes into play, it's all NIL based. Greg Schiano has done a great job of raising funds for their NIL bank, and they're not afraid to use it. And it's showing on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal. So,
yeah, no, it's been an outstanding class so far. And I'm sure the momentum will keep moving forward, but they will be looking elsewhere for a running back. Name TBD at the moment, but they're not going to rush this one.
No reason to. Oh, you know who you could go after, and I forgot all about him actually. Erasmus Hall. They have a Power 5 running back right now in Amir Morrow. He just got a North Carolina offer and went down to North Carolina for a visit. Now it might be hard because Bill Belichick just kind of made a serious push for him. It sounds like he might end up there, but Erasmus Hall, you got a bunch of connections. It makes a lot of sense. He's a pretty good back. So
interesting.
Yeah.
What's he ranked in terms of recruiting?
He's actually not ranked yet, and I've been fighting for him to get a ranking over the past week or two, honestly. But we have a new system where we're going to update our rankings more often. So he should have one shortly. But he's 6'1", like 215-pound running back. He's a little bit bigger type of back. He's not like a Jaylen McGill who is 5'9", 200. Not Kyle Monangai, who's around that same type of build. But it really depends what you want. I know I shouldn't say they shied away from that type of style of back because they got Sam Brown a couple years ago, but they prefer the shorter, stockier backs like the Terrell Mitchells, like the Jaylen McGills, to be honest. But I'm trying to think who else they got in recent cycles. Ed Guerrier, a little bit smaller. It seems like they prefer that type of style.
Gotcha. So speaking of the coaching staffs, what they like, one thing Greg Schiano clearly likes is bringing the band back together because he has done it once again with adding John McNulty to fill in John Perry's role. John Perry, the former Houston Texans wide receiver coach. He also was the offensive coordinator at Sam Houston State. He was at Rutgers for 2 or 3 years as the assistant wide receivers coach, making Rutgers have one of the most stacked wide receiver rooms in terms of experience in the country. He left for a role at Texas A&M this offseason, and I think we're all kind of wondering who would fill that role because it seems like they've just done a good job getting those type of experienced guys. And the answer came in John McNulty, who used to be the offensive coordinator at Rutgers. He was here multiple times, actually. He also had several stops in the NFL as a wide receivers coach and a tight ends coach. He has rejoined the program for the third or fourth time now.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of that hire, and how did that one come together?
I think if Kirk Straka ends up ever leaving, I think I found my new name for the hot board right away, like immediately. It used to be like, I don't know if you remember this, like when we were putting up offensive, like assistant coach hot boards, it was always like Joe Susan somehow made it on there. It didn't matter. But this time it's going to be McNulty for the next couple of years, and I can't wait. But yeah, no, I think it's a good hire. I mean, it's definitely can't hurt with all that experience. He was just at Bama for 2 years, so he knows how things run under Saban. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer is a little bit different how they ran it down there, and I think that's part of the reason why he left too. He's coached in the NFL where he's got a ton of ties. He's been to Notre Dame recently. He's been to just about everywhere, Boston College, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He has such a good resume. To get him as a senior offensive analyst is huge. How long is he going to stay? I think that's a big question, because I think McNulty's always been a guy that's always been able to find a gig like this and able to turn it into whether a position coach or an OC gig again. Will that happen? I'm not going to say it's definitely going to happen, but I think it's probably, a matter of time before he's a position coach. Could that be at Rutgers based on maybe Dave Brock gets a $1 million offer from someone, because that's the only thing that's going to surpass his new contract extension. But and maybe you promote him, or maybe Scott Vallone gets a position coach elsewhere, and you need a tight ends coach. John McNulty's got experience doing that, so he's also coached one of the best ever in Antonio Gates, so that obviously helps. But I think it's a damn good hire. It's nice that it's crazy to me, because I was saying to you off the pod, he's brought every former OC but Frank Signetti back from 2006 to 2012 on the staff. That's McNulty,
Wow.
Shiraka, and Dave Brock, like all in different capacities. Just an absolutely like big name hire to replace John Perry. I know you said it was arguably the most experienced wide receiver room in terms of coaching last year, but it basically just replicated itself by replacing Perry with McNulty. Like, it's just that easy.
Yeah, you look at McNulty's. I'll just run through his resume real quick. I'll share the screen one up for those who like a visual aid here. Just like, you forget all the stops that he's had in his career because we're just so focused on Rutgers. So he was with the Jaguars for 5 years, from 98 to 02. Mm-hmm. He was the Cowboys wide receiver coach before he started his first stint at Rutgers. Then he was the wide receiver coach for the Arizona Cardinals. Yep. And I believe one of these years they went to the Super Bowl, if I remember correctly. But obviously coached some outstanding receivers in the NFL in Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden. Then he was the QB coach there. I believe he coached, I want to say that was the year Carson Palmer was there, but maybe I'm wrong. Went on to coach QBs for Schiano in Tampa Bay, then coached QBs in Tennessee, the Titans for 2 years. Then he went to be the tight ends coach with the Chargers for 2 years in 16 and 17. Then he rejoined Rutgers for 2 years. And then he's been in college ever since. He was an analyst for Penn State in 19, tight end coach for Notre Dame in 2021, offensive coordinator at Boston College in 22. And then for the last 2 years, he's been an analyst at Alabama.
I think he's going to help out Scott Vallone a ton more than we think. I know he's specifically helping out the wide receivers, but like this is a guy that had Michael Meyer. Was it Michael Meyer or Michael Meyer at Notre Dame a couple years ago at Notre Dame was a finalist for the Mackey Award. Like he's coached him. He's coached Antonio Gates. Like he's got a nice little resume of tight end coaches or tight end development that I think he'll help out a guy that like Scott Vallone, who's a little bit green to coaching tight ends, more of an offensive line guy, helping those guys block. But I'm not saying Kenny Fletcher's going to be a Mackey Award finalist, but like, or who's the new guy? I can't even remember his name. Jeez, from Charlotte, Colin Weber.
Oh, Colin Weber. Yeah.
I don't think either of them is going to win the Mackey Award, but I think you could help them develop, of course.
Sure. So yeah, I like the hire for the role he's being brought in a lot. But it is like kind of, you got to wonder at some point, like, when's Greg going to make like a big hire that's outside of his, comfort level? Not that he hired, a super high risk role here in McNulty. But, he likes to bring people he's worked with before back. So,
you know what people's response is to that, right? It's going to be like, well, he went after Sean Gleason and look what happened. And it's yeah, whatever. I mean, you got to be able to go outside your tree. And he did that a little bit with Sparber. I'll give him that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see him extend that tree a little more and see what else other branches you can add to it. Like there's a lot of young Jersey coaches out there that I would love to see at Rutgers. And for some reason or not, they're offensive analysts at West Virginia and Purdue, et cetera. And I'm not naming anyone specifically. It's just like, you got to give these, and I know they're green, but I'd rather give a green up and comer from Jersey a chance versus John McNulty for the third time.
Yeah,
maybe not McNulty specifically, but
in fairness, that's what he's doing with Sparber. So
yeah, we'll give him a chance. I want to see more of that though going forward. Like say if a certain cornerbacks coach was to leave, I would go after a certain New Jersey guy that was hired by Harris Simiak recently, but also left Harris Simiak recently. Just saying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Connect the dots there. Is there any new news on Mark Orfeh in terms of? I know he's one of the top 3 candidates for the Texas. Is it the cornerback's job or the defensive back's job?
So they have a safeties coach technically.
Okay.
But he's also their co-DC. I was told. I'm sorry, they have a corners coach specifically. He's also their co-DC, but I was told that doesn't matter to Sarkisian. He might just alternate that guy to a safety spot if he has to and put the new guy at corners or vice versa. So there's technically just an opening for DBs at Texas, although they do have one DBs coach there already. But in terms of update, no, nothing new. All 3 of those guys are expected to interview this week if they haven't already. I haven't heard if that's yes or no yet, but I know Mark Orfeh is projected to interview. And it sounds like from some of our friends at the Texas site that he might be arguably the favorite or the under the radar of the 3. So it sounds like they want to get more involved in Houston. He's a Houston guy. North Shore High School produces at a crazy rate, as does every Texas high school. And it's a region that Texas, ironically, hasn't really recruited that well, which is weird to say for any single region in Texas for the University of Texas. But so we'll see what happens there. He's a man to definitely monitor over the next couple days for coaching change potentially.
Love to hear that. One other coaching thing. There's a couple Rutgers guys now on the Dallas Cowboys staff. Taekwon Underwood is now the assistant wide receivers coach there. And this just got announced 2 days ago. Steve Shimko, former Rutgers quarterback, is now the quarterbacks coach for the Dallas Cowboys. He's had quite the rise in his coaching career from the time he was a graduate assistant under Schiano in his last year in the 1.0 era to now. He's had quite the rise. So
good for him. Yeah. He was at OC, right, at Boston College?
He was the OC in 2023, yep. And he went from being the OC and quarterbacks coach there to joining the Cowboys as just an offensive assistant, and now getting elevated to quarterbacks coach. So
he's going to have his work cut out for him there with Dak Prescott.
I mean, it's easy to forget in the 2023 season, Dak Prescott finished second in the MVP voting. I mean, it wasn't particularly close. Lamar, I think, had 49 of the 50 first place votes in 23, so it's not like
it's true.
The only other first place vote went to Josh Allen in 23. So while Dak did finish second, it wasn't very close. But maybe he can bring that back out of him.
We'll see.
Let's hit on some basketball before we head out of here. Obviously, a disappointing loss on Sunday afternoon in College Park to Maryland. Expected, but nonetheless disappointing. I think the most confusing thing was Ace Bailey kind of played, but then sat out most of the second half with a towel over his head. I thought, oh God, he caught what, Jeremiah Williams had. What are you hearing in terms of availability for tonight? Do you think the team's going to be at full strength, obviously outside of Emmanuel Agbole, or is there any kind of lingering sickness traveling around the team?
Yeah, I was told that it was actually an asthma attack. We've known Ace has had asthma for quite some time now. He's always had an inhaler on him, whether it's at practice, even around shoot around and warm ups. I just don't know specifics on like what kind of asthma it is. If I had to guess, probably like an exercise induced one. And he just has to have an inhaler with him. And sometimes you can't help it. It just flares up, and you have to treat it as you can see it, as you see fit. So it does sound like he's going to play tonight. Should be no issues there. So you'll get him back versus a Iowa team that doesn't really play much defense. So you have a good shot today. So we'll see what happens. But I've noticed the over/under took a nice little leap up to like 160-ish range, 162, I think it is. So that's a little high. And then Rutgers is favored by like 7.5. Like I'm eerily confident in this one, which is it's not something I could say in recent games.
Yeah, I would eerily confident for a 7.5 point spread. Yeah, you should be confident. I think this is the worst team we'll face the rest of the year.
Oh, Minnesota's right there, but they did bounce back recently. Actually, I take it back. So
arguably the worst, we'll say. Let's see. I'm looking now for their spread tonight. Spread I'm currently seeing is 5.5.
Ooh, maybe it changed already. Maybe people don't know about the Ace Bailey stuff that we know, that everyone listening to this pod knows.
Yeah, so still time to make a bet there.
Oh, it did jump down, or it did drop down. Wow, that's crazy.
But
because I just use ESPN and it's down to 5.5 as well.
Interesting.
Trying to make some money.
Do you have anything else we wanted to hit on before we head out of here?
Not that I could think of. If you haven't already, I mean, the message boards are filled at this time of year specifically with all kinds of rumors, offers, commitments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know someone asked us in our recent comments, can you do a pod breaking down all the offers in January? There's like 100 of them, number one. I already did that too on an article, and it's just a lot of rehash. So I definitely check that out on the site if you haven't already. I did a big board yesterday of the offense, recruiting big board of offense. Obviously, that's going to change a little bit. I'm probably going to have to edit that running back part now. Defense will be coming out shortly, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of recruiting tidbits this dead period. Not many offers out there just yet. I expect a lot more in March and February. March and actually it's February too, because they're starting to send out recent offers to like offensive linemen. Guys are starting to schedule their official visits. I think so far we have 1 or 2 that are scheduled for Rutgers. Tavian Branch is the one to keep an eye on. Defensive tackle out of Riverside High School in Pennsylvania. Sounds like Rutgers is second right now behind Oklahoma, and Penn State's third. If Penn State kicks the tires a little more, I feel like they might be able to pull in the lead. I think Rutgers is right there, though. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one works. He's the kid that when Oklahoma visited recently, he was rocking a Rutgers shirt, which was kind of hilariously. And then a very questionable hat from the Oklahoma coaching staff that you can go check that one out yourself if you want. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else. Women's basketball is tonight too against Iowa, which is just weird to me. But
yeah,
they're
interesting.
Yeah, that's it really. Oh, baseball. Baseball's this weekend too.
Opening series against Kennesaw State, right?
Yep. So time to get revenge.
Revenge there, hopefully. Also, we're still running that giveaway.
Yes.
If you'd like to be a part of the giveaway, go to your Apple Podcasts app, leave a 5-star review mentioning 400 somewhere. It's our 400th episode celebration. That'll get you 2 entries to the contest. Mm-hmm. And if you would like to enter a different way, you can go into the comments of this video below on YouTube and reference in the comments 400 in your comment, and you'll have 1 entry that way.
And hit subscribe if you haven't already.
If you haven't subscribed, obviously, the easiest thing you can do to help us out. That's it. So thanks once again for listening. I don't know when our next pod will be. Obviously a game tonight, so maybe we'll be back on tomorrow, but not totally sure. But for me and Richie, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.